I woke up to the sound of my alarm clock, sharp as a rusty nail scratching metal. 6 in the morning. It's still dark outside, with only a faint gray light coming through the curtains Emily hung up a couple of years ago. She then said they were freshening up the room. I nodded, although I didn't care. The main thing is that she liked it. I lay there for a second, looking at the ceiling. The old house creaked somewhere in the corner. Probably the wind was again blowing dust through the attic. I should get in there and check, but I still can't get around to it. I stretched, feeling my muscles ache from yesterday all day fiddling with the engine of the old Ford. The client, a fat guy with an eagle tattoo on his neck, yelled that it's urgent and then left without even saying thank you. A common thing for a workshop. I turned my head. Emily was still sleeping, or pretending to be asleep. Her blonde hair was scattered across the pillow, one strand covering her face. She was breathing evenly, but something in this breathing seemed foreign to me. Maybe I'm making this up. In recent weeks, she has been somehow distant, as if a wall has grown between us. Not glass, but brick you can't see it with your eyes. I called quietly, but she didn't move. I decided not to wake him up. Let him sleep. She's going to the office today, and there, as she says, it's always a mess. Law firm, important clients, a lot of papers. I don't ask for details she doesn't like to tell anyway. I stood up, my bare feet touching the cold floor. The kitchen greeted me with the smell of yesterday's coffee. I forgot to throw the grounds out of the coffee maker. While the water was heating up, I looked out the window. The street was empty, only the neighbor's dog, a huge Labrador named Buddy, was wandering near the fence. He barked when he saw me, but I waved my hand, and he calmed down. Good dog. Sometimes I feel like he understands me better than other people. I made coffee and poured it into a mug labeled Best Husband. Emily gave it to her for her last birthday. Then she laughed, hugged me, and I felt on top of the world. Now this mug seemed like some kind of mockery to me. I took a sip, as bitter as my thoughts. I arrived at the workshop at 8. The sun had already risen, flooding the town with dim light. Ohio in February is not the most fun place. The snow has long melted, leaving dirt and grayness. The paint on the Wilson's auto sign is peeling, but I'm in no rush to update it. There are enough clients, but I don't care about show-offs. Jake, you look like you ran over a cat again, Bobby, my partner, said to me when I entered. He fiddled with the tire, his hands black with oil. Bobby is a big guy with a lumberjack beard and a sense of humor that makes you want to strangle him. I just didn't get enough sleep, I lied, taking off my jacket. In fact, I slept normally, but something inside was gnawing at me like a mouse at an old rag. I couldn't figure out what. Well, then here you go. He threw me the keys to the Chevrolet, which was driven yesterday. The engine knocks like my old man does when he gets drunk. Figure it out. I nodded and climbed under the hood. Work is what saves me. When I tinker with iron, my thoughts go somewhere. Valves, bolts, wires, everything is simple, everything is clear. Not like people. I turned the nuts, listened to the engine cough, and tried not to think about Emily. But her face still stuck in my head, her smile, which had looked strained lately, her voice, which had become sharper. By lunchtime, I was done with the Chevrolet. The client, a woman of about 40 with tired eyes, thanked her and left. I wiped my hands with a rag and went to the utility room to have a snack. A ham sandwich and a can of Coke is my standard lunch. Bobby sat nearby, chatting about his girl who wants a dog. I listened with half an ear, nodding as he waited for a reaction. "What are you and Emily planning?" he suddenly asked. They were talking about the child after all. I froze with a sandwich in my hand. Emily and I really talked about children. 6 months ago, she started a conversation herself. They say, it's time, we are already over 30, we have a house, we have a stable job. I agreed. I liked to think about the little man who would run around the yard and call me daddy. But then everything died out. She stopped mentioning it, but I didn't insist. I don't know yet, I answered, shrugging my shoulders. She is busy at work. Bobby chuckled, but didn't say anything. In general, he rarely interferes in other people's affairs, for which I respect him. The day passed slowly. After lunch, I took on the old pickup truck rusty, but still alive. The owner, a farmer from a neighboring district, asked to make sure he survives until spring. I was digging through it when I heard Bobby shout, "Jake, yours is calling." I got out from under the car, wiping my hands. Emily rarely calls during the day. I picked up the phone, and for some reason my heart began to pound. "Hello," her voice was dry, like autumn leaves. "I'll be late today. The project is urgent." Again, I burst out. I didn't mean to sound accusing, but that's how it turned out. "Yes, again," she sighed. "Don't start, Jake. I'm tired." "Okay," I muttered. "See you in the evening." She hung up, and I stood there looking at the phone. Something in her tone cut me. Not fatigue, but irritation. It's like I'm bothering her. I put the phone in my pocket and walked back to the truck, but I couldn't concentrate anymore. In the evening, I finished work and went home. The road wound past fields, bare trees, and rare houses. The radio was playing some old rock music, but I turned it off. Silence was better. When I entered the house, it was empty. Emily hasn't returned yet. I threw the keys on the table and turned on the light. The kitchen still smelled of old coffee. I sat down on the sofa and opened a beer. The TV was droning about the weather, but I wasn't listening. My thoughts swirled around Emily. Where is she? With whom? Why do I feel like a stranger in my own home? I finished my beer and put the can on the table. Something heavy, like stone, was growing inside. Then I dozed off. I dreamed of a mirror, large, in a wooden frame, like the one in our bedroom. I looked into it, but my face was not mine. The eyes were burning, the mouth was twisted in a grin. I reached out my hand to touch the glass, and it cracked with a loud crunch. I shuddered and woke up. The clock showed midnight. Emily was still missing. I got up and went to the window. The street was silent, only Buddy howled quietly somewhere in the distance. I turned to the mirror in the living room, the same one from the dream. I looked tired, but calm, or so it seemed to me. "It's okay," I said to myself out loud, but my voice trembled, and I realized that I didn't believe myself. The morning started the same way as yesterday with an alarm clock, which I already hate. I lay in bed, looking at the ceiling, until this squeak broke through my sleep. 6 in the morning. Emily wasn't there. I extended my hand. Her pillow was cold. She left early or didn't go to bed at all. I didn't hear her come back yesterday. Maybe I slept too soundly, or maybe she wasn't there. This thought stabbed me somewhere under the ribs, but I brushed it aside. She said it was work. Project. I stood up, rubbing my face. The mirror in the bathroom greeted me with my own reflection, and I stopped, looking at myself. Jake Wilson, 32 years old. Short dark hair, already slightly touched with gray at the temples thanks to stress and genes. The eyes are brown, tired, with small wrinkles in the corners. I never considered myself handsome, but Emily once said that I had an honest face. I don't know what that means, but I like the way she said it. He is slightly above average. His shoulders are broad from working with iron. My hands are covered in calluses. My nails always have a black border from oil, no matter how much I wash them. An ordinary guy from Ohio, an auto mechanic who fixes other people's cars and tries not to ruin his life. I splashed water on my face, feeling the cold drive away the remnants of sleep. Yesterday's dream with a mirror was still looming somewhere on the edge of my consciousness, but I didn't want to think about it. Instead, I remembered Emily. What she looks like in the morning when she has not yet put on makeup and pulled her hair into a neat ponytail for the office. Her blonde hair almost white, like the sun on the snow, always smells of something floral like lavender. The eyes are blue, bright, but lately the light has gone out in them. She is slender, slightly shorter than me, with a light gait, like a dancer. Emily is beautiful, I realized that the first day I saw her. But now she seems different to me. Cold. Or am I making this up myself? I went down to the kitchen and put on the coffee. While the water hissed in the coffee maker, I leaned against the countertop and closed my eyes. Thoughts flowed back to where it all began. It was 5 years ago, at the rusty nail bar on the outskirts of the city. I went there after work to have a beer and forget about yet another customer who was yelling at me because of the price. There was live music playing in the corner, some guy was strumming a guitar, and people were making noise and laughing. I was sitting at the counter, twirling the bottle in my hands when she walked in. Emily was like a flash. Jeans, white t-shirt, hair down, nothing special, but I couldn't look away. She sat down next to me, ordered wine, and I, plucking up the courage, said something stupid like, "They rarely order something like this here." She laughed, and her laughter was like the ringing of a bell, pure light. We started talking. She said that she had just moved here and got a job as an assistant at a law firm. I joked that she was too pretty for paper, and she rolled her eyes but smiled. I didn't sleep that night. We chatted until closing, and then I walked her home, an old rented cottage 2 blocks from the bar. She gave me her number, and I left feeling like some teenager who had fallen in love for the first time. The next day I called, and everything started to happen. We dated for almost a year. I took her to the lake where I fished with my father in the summer while he was alive. She laughed at how clumsily I tried to cook her dinner. I once almost burned down the kitchen while making steak. She taught me to dance to the radio in her small living room, and I pretended that I didn't like it, although everything inside was singing. Emily was like a fresh wind in my life's simple gray, where every day smelled of gasoline and iron. I proposed on the same lake. It was August, the sun was setting, the water glowed golden. I took out a ring cheap, but all I could afford. She said yes so quickly that I didn't even have time to finish my prepared speech. We hugged, and I thought everything would be fine now, that we are forever. The wedding was modest. Local church, about 20 guests. Emily, in a white dress that a friend lent her, looked better than all the models from the magazines. I put on a suit, the first one in my life, and felt like I was in someone else's shoes. Bobby was my best man and joked that I sold my freedom. We danced to an old Elvis song, and I remember how her hand lay in mine warm, alive. At night, we ran away from everyone to a motel, laughed, and drank cheap champagne straight from the bottle. This was our night, and I thought there would be many more like this. I opened my eyes. The coffee cooled in the mug as I fell into memories. That Jake from the past seemed almost a stranger to me, happy, confident. And now? I finished my cold drink and went to get ready for the workshop. The day passed in a blur. I was fixing cars, chatting with Bobby, but my thoughts kept returning to Emily. To Emily who laughed in the bar, and to the one who didn't come home yesterday. That evening, I met Tom at the Rusty Nail. He called himself and said we should have a drink out of old friendship. Tom is my school friend, tall, with a smooth face and a smile that makes women smile. He is now a realtor, sells houses, and earns more than I do in a year. "How are you, old man?" he asked, tapping me on the shoulder. His eyes sparkled with beer and something else, self-confidence, perhaps. "Okay," I replied, taking a sip from the bottle. "And you?" "Oh, everything is covered in chocolate," he winked. "I closed the deal last week, now I'm resting. You know, women love success." I nodded, but something sank inside. He continued to chat about clients, about a new car, about some girl he met. I listened, but his words slipped by. "How is Emily?" he suddenly asked, and I almost choked on my beer. "It works a lot," I said, looking into the bottle. Delayed again. "Well, lawyers," he chuckled. "Success requires sacrifice." I said nothing. We drank more, and Tom started making jokes about being in an open relationship. Like, in our time, this is normal, everyone lives like this. I laughed, but it came out forced. When he went to the toilet, I stared at my reflection in the bar counter. The eyes are dark and intense. Something was wrong. I returned home late. Emily was already asleep or pretending to be again. I lay down next to him, trying not to wake him up. Her breathing was even, but I couldn't sleep. Snippets were spinning in my head, her laughter in the bar, her yes by the lake, her cold voice on the phone. And Tom, his wink, his words. I closed my eyes and dreamed of the mirror again. This time it didn't crack. I looked into it, and someone else looked from there. He didn't speak, just grinned. and I suddenly realized that I was afraid of him. The morning started out lousy. I woke up to silence, no alarm clock, no sounds from the kitchen. Emily has already left. I didn't even hear her getting ready. The bed on her side was neatly made, as if she had never gone to bed. Maybe she didn't go to bed. I lay there looking at the ceiling and felt something smoldering inside. Not rage, not yet, but something heavy, like wet sand in the chest. I stood up, rubbing my neck. The bathroom mirror showed me the same Jake, tired, with bags under his eyes. I splashed water on my face, but it didn't help. Coffee didn't help either. I forgot to buy beans and had to settle for instant, which tastes like dirt. The day was already going awry, and it hadn't even started yet. It was no better in the workshop. Bobby immediately noticed my mood and shut up after the first attempt at a joke. I took on the old Dodge, which was driven in yesterday. The carburetor was acting up, like my thoughts. I turned the nuts, listened to the engine cough, but Emily stood before my eyes. Her cold voice on the phone. I'll be late. How many times have I heard this in the last month? 10, 20, I've lost count. By lunchtime, I was done with the car, but I had no appetite. The sandwich lay untouched, while Bobby chewed his and chatted about football. I nodded without understanding. My mind was occupied with other things. When was the last time Emily and I spent an evening together? Not just sitting in the same room, but actually being together. I strained my memory, but all that came up was her back, going into the darkness, and her, "Don't wait for me, go to bed." What about sex? I almost dropped the wrench when the thought hit me. When was the last time? I closed my eyes, trying to remember. A month ago. 2. There was something in December, I think. Or in November. She came late. I was already falling asleep, but she pulled me towards her. It was fast, almost mechanical, as if she wanted to finish quickly. I didn't pay any attention to it. Then tiredness, work, it happens. But now, standing in the workshop with dirty hands, I realized that I don't remember when her touch was warm. The day dragged on endlessly. I repaired cars, responded to clients, but everything was automatic. Irritation grew inside, like a splinter that could not be pulled out. By 6, I finished and went home. Emily wasn't there, of course. I threw the keys on the table, opened the beer, and sat down on the couch. The TV was muttering something about the news, but I didn't listen. I was waiting for her. She came in at 9:30. I heard the door slam and her heels click on the floor. She appeared in the living room, still in her office skirt and blouse, with a bag over her shoulder. His hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Tired but beautiful. I looked at her and didn't know what I felt, love or anger. "Hi," she said, throwing her bag on the chair. The voice is dry, like an autumn leaf. "Hello," I answered without getting up. The beer in my hand was already warm, but I took a sip anyway. She went into the kitchen and poured water. I heard the glass clinking as she drank. Then she returned and sat down opposite me, looking somewhere past me. "You're late again," I said. I didn't want to start so abruptly, but the words came out on their own. "Yes, work," she shrugged, without even looking at me. "I told you so." "You say that every day, Emily." My voice became louder than I intended. "Every damn day. I don't remember when you were home before midnight." She sighed, wearily rubbing her temples. "Jake, I don't want to fight. I've had a rough day." "Do you think I have a mild one?" I put the beer on the table, almost spilling it. "I'm in the workshop all day, tinkering with iron, and when I come home, it's empty. You are out there somewhere with your projects. This is my job." She finally looked at me, and a spark of irritation flashed in her eyes. "You knew who you married. I'm not a housewife." "I'm not asking you to be a housewife." I stood up, feeling the blood pounding in my temples. "But I want you to be my wife, at least sometimes. We don't even talk normally. You come, remain silent, sleep, and that's it. Because I'm exhausted, Jake." She also stood up, her voice breaking into a scream. "I have clients, deadlines, and bosses yelling. I can't give up everything and sit here with you, pretending everything is perfect. When were we ever together?" I stepped towards her, clenching my fists, not out of anger, but out of powerlessness. I don't remember the last time we had dinner together. When was the last time you looked at me and not at your phone? When did we? I hesitated, but blurted out anyway. When was the last time we had sex, Emily? She froze. Her face turned pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. I waited for her to say, but she was silent. The seconds passed like hours. Did you really say that just now? She finally managed to say, her voice shaking. You're counting the days, right? What else should I do? I spread my hands. I don't see you. I don't feel it. You're like a ghost in this house. I don't even know if you still need me. We need it, she turned away, looking out the window. It's just, everything is complicated. I can't talk about it now. Of course, I smiled bitterly. You never can. Work, fatigue, not now. Maybe I should make an appointment with you, like with your clients. Stop it, she sharply turned to me. Do you think it's easy for me? I'm trying to make sure we have a future, so that we can afford more than this house and your workshop. I don't need any more. I stepped closer, looking into her eyes. I need you, but you're not here. She opened her mouth to answer, but then simply shook her head. I'm going to bed, she said quietly and went into the bedroom. The door slammed and I was left alone in the living room, clutching an empty beer can. I didn't follow her. I sat back on the sofa and turned on the TV, but turned off the sound. The pictures flashed by, and I looked into nothing. We've never quarreled like this. There used to be minor fights over money, over who forgot to buy milk. But this was different. It was like a crack in glass, small for now, but I knew it would grow. I sat there until midnight. Then he turned off the light and went upstairs. Emily was sleeping with her face turned to the wall. I lay down next to him, trying not to make any noise, but I couldn't sleep. Her words were spinning in my head. Mine too. I looked into the darkness, feeling the distance between us growing, even though we were lying in the same bed. And suddenly I heard footsteps. Quiet, but clear, somewhere below. I froze, listening. Footsteps walked across the living room, then died away. My heart began to pound. Emily was breathing evenly. She couldn't hear anything. I stood up slowly, trying not to break the floorboards, and went down the stairs. The living room was empty. The lights are off. Everything is in place. I walked around the house, the kitchen, the hallway, even the pantry. No one. The door is locked. The windows are closed. I stood at the entrance, listening to the silence. Nothing but the wind outside the window. Maybe it seemed. Fatigue, nerves. I returned to the bedroom and lay down. Emily didn't move. I closed my eyes, but sleep did not come. The footsteps still sounded in my head, like an echo of something I couldn't understand. The morning was gray, like asphalt after rain. I woke up before the alarm clock, lay and watched the shadows crawl across the ceiling. Emily has already left. Her pillow is cold again. The blanket is neatly tucked in. After yesterday's quarrel, I didn't expect her to stay, but the emptiness in the house still stung. I stood up, feeling my muscles ache, either from work or from lack of sleep. In the kitchen, I made coffee normal this time, because yesterday I popped into the store. While the water was heating up, I looked out the window. The neighbor's dog Buddy wandered near the fence, poking his nose in the dirt. The street was silent, only the wind blew garbage along the sidewalk. I poured coffee into my old mug and sat down at the table, trying to collect my thoughts. Today is Saturday. Emily said she would go to the office, although she usually took the day off. Urgent project again. I finished my coffee and decided not to think about it. I drove to the workshop in silence and did not turn on the radio. Work is my way to switch off. Bobby was already there, tinkering with some Toyota. He nodded to me, but did not chat. Apparently, he sensed that I was not in the mood. I started working on an old pickup truck that I finished yesterday. The owner was supposed to pick it up for lunch, but I decided to check again in case I missed something. The hands moved on their own. The key, the bolts, the wires. Everything is simple. Everything is clear. Not like at home. By lunchtime, the pickup was ready. The farmer arrived, an elderly man in a shabby jacket, with hands like mine, only older. He thanked me, handed me a couple of crumpled 20s on top of the bill and left. I wiped my hands with a rag and went to the utility room to have a snack. There was a ham sandwich in my backpack, but I didn't feel like eating it. I sat looking at the wall and thought about Emily, about how she went into the bedroom yesterday, slamming the door, about how I didn't follow her. Bobby looked into the back room, holding a can of Coke. "Are you okay, Jake?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "You look like you've been run over by a truck." "I just didn't get enough sleep," I lied, shrugging. He chuckled, but did not go any further. Bobby is like this. If he sees that I don't want to talk, he moves away. After lunch, I decided to clean up the workshop. Swept the floor, collected the trash, wiped down the workbench. There was little work, and I was already thinking about going home when I remembered Emily's car. She left her Hyundai at the house yesterday morning. She complained that it was making a strange noise. I said that I would look, but the quarrel knocked it out of my mind. Now the opportunity arose to do something useful, and I went home to get the car. The house was quiet. I drove the Hyundai into the garage next to the workshop and opened the hood. The engine looked fine, but I checked it anyway: oil, filters, spark plugs. Nothing serious, just a little thing with the belt. I tightened it, started the car, and the noise disappeared. Emily will be pleased, I thought. Or not. Now she rarely notices what I do. Having finished the repairs, I decided to clean the interior. Emily always leaves a mess: their coffee cups, pieces of paper, some pens. I opened the glove compartment, emptied the trash, and went over the seats with a rag. And then, under the passenger seat, something flashed. I reached down, reached under the seat, and pulled out the bracelet. Male, heavy, dark metal with engraving some initials, hard to make out. I froze, holding it in my hand. It's not mine. I don't have bracelets, I can't stand them. They cling to everything in the workshop. I turned it over and looked at it. Simple, but expensive, not cheap. Where is he from? I placed the bracelet on my palm, feeling its coldness creeping through my skin. My heart beat faster than I expected. When Emily returned home, it was already getting dark. I was sitting in the kitchen. The bracelet was on the table in front of me. She came in, dropped her bag as usual, and froze when she saw me. "You're early," she said, taking off her coat. The voice is tired, but I sensed something else in it. "Yes, there's not enough work," I answered, looking at her. "I fixed your car." The noise was in the belt. "Thank you," she nodded, but did not smile. She went to the sink and poured water. I looked at her back, at the way she moved sharply, as if she was in a hurry. "Emily," I called, and she turned around. I picked up the bracelet, holding it between my fingers. "What is this?" She looked at him, and her face trembled for a second. "It's barely noticeable, but I caught it." "Oh, that's..." She hesitated and came closer. "This is a gift. For the client. I was supposed to tell you, but I forgot." Her voice trembled. "Not much, but enough for me to notice." She extended her hand to take the bracelet, but I didn't give it to her. "Present?" I asked, looking into her eyes. "From whom?" "From the company," she shrugged, but the movement came out unnaturally. "We sometimes give such things to important people. Thanks for the transactions. And you forgot it in the car." I didn't want to sound accusing, but the tone still became harsh. "Yes, Jake, I forgot." She rolled her eyes, but I saw how her fingers clenched on the glass. "I've been on my feet all day. My head is full." "What's wrong?" I was silent, twirling the bracelet in my hands. She looked at me, waiting for me to say. "Nothing," I finally squeezed out, putting the bracelet on the table. "I just asked." She nodded, took it, and went into the bedroom. I heard her open the dresser drawer and heard something jingle there. Then silence. I stayed in the kitchen, looking at the empty table. Am I too suspicious? I asked myself. Maybe so. She said it was a gift. Job. She really has a lot to do. I can see it myself. But why did her voice tremble? Why did she leave so quickly? I rubbed my temples, feeling my head begin to buzz. Maybe I'm looking for problems where there are none. We quarreled yesterday. I was tired, and so was she. Everything is understandable. I got up, opened a beer, and sat down on the sofa. The TV was showing some old movie, but I didn't follow the plot. My thoughts revolved around the bracelet. I tried to remember, did she wear something like that? No, she doesn't like such decorations. Then where is he from? I shook my head, driving away the questions. Enough is enough, I told myself. It's just a bracelet. Dinner passed in silence. Emily came down, warmed up her food, and sat down opposite. We hardly spoke. She was typing something on her phone. I was picking at the potatoes on my plate. Then she went to bed, and I stayed to clean up. That night, I went to bed late. Emily slept with her face turned to the wall, just like yesterday. I looked into the darkness, listening to her breathing. Sleep did not come. My thoughts were still buzzing like a swarm of bees, and suddenly I felt weak. My head was spinning and my vision was blurry. I blinked, trying to come to my senses, but everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, it was quiet. I was lying on the bed, the sheet crumpled under me. How much time has passed? 5 minutes? 10? I sat up, feeling my heart pounding. My hands were shaking. I looked at them. There was dirt under my nails. Black, fresh, as if I was digging in the ground. But I didn't get up. Or did you get up? I got up and went to the window. The street was asleep. Only the street lamp was blinking in the distance. Emily didn't move. I went downstairs and checked my hands under the light. They looked like dirt. Where? I washed them after dinner, I'm sure. I walked around the house, looked into the garage. Everything was closed. Everything was in place. No land, no tracks. Returning to the bedroom, I lay down, but could no longer sleep. I looked at my hands, at the dark stripes under my nails, and asked myself, what's wrong with me? Maybe I was sleepwalking. This has never happened before. Or was it? I closed my eyes, but found no answers. Several weeks have passed since I found the bracelet in Emily's car. Life seems to have returned to normal, if you can call it that. I was fixing cars, she went to work, we hardly talked. The quarrel then, in the living room, remained hanging between us, like undried laundry on a line heavy, wet, making it difficult to pass. I didn't bring up the bracelet again, and she didn't explain. We just lived nearby, but not together. The morning was cold. March in Ohio was not particularly warm. I woke up to the sound of the alarm clock, but Emily was no longer there. Her place in the bed is neatly made, as if she wants to erase all traces of us sleeping together. I stood up, feeling the floor freezing my feet. The mirror in the bathroom showed me the same Jake. His dark hair was slightly disheveled. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. I splashed water on my face, but it didn't make me feel tired. I haven't slept well in recent weeks. I tossed and turned, looked into the darkness, listened to her breathing. Sometimes it seemed to me that she was not breathing at all, and I would stretch out my hand to check. In the kitchen, I made coffee and poured it into a mug. Outside the window, the neighbor's dog Buddy was barking at something, maybe a squirrel, maybe the wind. I looked at him, twirling the spoon in my hands, and thought about how everything had changed. Saturdays used to be ours. We went to the lake, walked, laughed. Now Saturday is just another day when she leaves and I stay. Today she said that she was going to a corporate event. The company suits me, I can't miss it, she said yesterday at dinner without looking at me. I nodded, although something sank inside. I arrived at the workshop at 9. Bobby was already there, tinkering with some Ford. He said hello, but didn't chat. He'd been talking less the last few days, as if he sensed I was on edge. I took on the old Honda. Someone had overheated the engine, and now it was coughing like an old man with a cold. Work was distracting. I turned bolts, checked valves, listened to the metal clicking under my hands. But thoughts still came into my head. Emily. Corporate. Why does she leave so often? Why do I feel like a stranger? By lunchtime, the Honda was ready. The client, a guy in his 20s with an eyebrow piercing, took it away with a muttered, "Thank you." I wiped my hands with a rag and went to the utility room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't eat it. I lost my appetite. Instead, I sat staring at the wall and tried to figure out what was wrong with me. After that story with the bracelet, I began to notice little things: how she looks away, how her voice trembles when I ask about work. I told myself that this was nonsense, that I was too suspicious. But the doubts did not go away. "Jake, you're like a zombie," Bobby said, looking into the back room. He held a bottle of water, sweat running down his forehead. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing," I lied, shrugging. "I was just thinking." "Well, think more quickly," he grinned. "Otherwise, clients will start complaining." I nodded, but his words went unnoticed. After lunch, I finished another car, an old pickup truck with a rusty body. The owner took it, and I decided to go home. Emily had already left for her corporate party. I saw her Hyundai disappear around the corner when I went out to the car in the morning. The house was quiet. I threw the keys on the table, opened the beer, and sat down on the sofa. The TV was showing some stupid series, but I didn't watch it. My thoughts revolved around Emily. She said that at a restaurant in the center, something like dinner with colleagues. I imagined her there in the black dress she wore last New Year, with a glass of wine in her hand, laughing with someone. This picture made my stomach churn. I finished my beer and opened a second one. The clock showed 7. She left about 2 hours ago, which means she's still there. I got up, walked around the living room, and looked out the window. The street was empty, only a lamp was blinking in the distance. And then I heard a voice. Quiet, low, right in your head. "She's lying," he whispered. I froze. My heart started pounding and my beer almost fell out of my hand. What the hell? I shook my head, but the voice did not disappear. He was like an echo, but inside me. "She's lying," he repeated, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "It's my imagination," I said out loud to drown it out. The voice died down, but the feeling remained. I sat back on the couch, clutching the can. "These are just thoughts," I told myself. "I'm tired, I'm angry, that's all. She's at a corporate party with colleagues. It's okay." But I couldn't sit still. I got up, took my jacket and keys. At first, I thought about going to a bar, having a drink with Bobby, and taking a break. But my legs carried me to the car. I got behind the wheel of my old Jeep and started the engine. I didn't know where I was going, but half an hour later, I found myself at the restaurant in the center that she was talking about. I parked across the street and turned off the engine. The windows of the restaurant glowed, figures flashed inside. I looked, trying to find her. Black dress, blonde hair. But she wasn't there. I waited 10, 20 minutes, but nothing. Maybe I'm in the wrong place, or has she already left? And then I felt my head spin. The world swam as if someone had turned off the light. I grabbed the steering wheel, trying to come to my senses, but everything went dark. When I woke up, I was at home. He was lying on the sofa, his jacket crumpled under his head. The clock showed midnight. My heart was pounding, my chest was burning, as if I had inhaled hot air. I sat down, looking around. The car was parked near the house. I saw it through the window. How did I get back? I didn't remember. I stood up, feeling weak in my legs. I went to the kitchen and poured water. My hands shook as I raised the glass to my lips. The burning sensation in my chest did not go away. It was sharp and unpleasant. I tried to remember what happened. I drove to the restaurant, waited, and then nothing. Emptiness. I went down to the garage and checked the Jeep. The keys are in my pocket. The mud on my shoes is fresh, as if I had walked somewhere. But where? I returned to the living room and sat down, looking at my hands. They were clean, but I felt something strange, as if they were not mine. Emily hasn't returned yet. I lay back on the sofa and closed my eyes. The burning in my chest slowly subsided, but the questions remained. What happened to me? Why don't I remember anything? I lay in the dark, listening to the silence, and tried to convince myself that everything was fine. But the voice in my head, the one that whispered, "She's lying," no longer seemed like just imagination. The morning started off cold. I woke up to the sound of rain outside the window. It was drumming on the roof, as if someone was pouring peas onto a tin tray. The clock showed 6. The alarm had not yet gone off. I lay looking at the ceiling and listened. Emily was not there. Her pillow was cold, as always. She returned late at night after her office party. I heard the door slam, but did not get up. After what happened yesterday, this strange loss of consciousness burning in my chest, I didn't want to see her. Or he couldn't. I stood up, feeling my body aching as if I had been carrying bags of cement all night. The bathroom mirror showed me a face that I had already grown to hate pale, with dark circles under my eyes. The hair was sticking out in all directions, and I ran my hand through it, but it didn't get any better. I splashed water on my face and dried myself with a towel. The rain outside the window intensified, the glass became covered with drops, and the world outside seemed blurry. In the kitchen, I made coffee and poured it into a mug. The smell was warm, but not soothing. I sat down at the table, looking at my hands. Last night was spinning in my head like a broken record. I drove to the restaurant, waited for Emily, then everything went dark and suddenly I was home, with this burning sensation in my chest. How did I get back? Why don't I remember anything? I finished my coffee, but found no answers. While I was getting ready for the workshop, the rain had subsided a little, but it was still drizzling. I put on my jacket, took my backpack, and went to the front door. And then I noticed my shoes. They stood at the threshold where I left them yesterday, but something was wrong. I bent down and took one in my hand. It was wet. Not just wet, but soaking wet, with mud on the soles. I froze, holding it. Yesterday, I didn't go out in the rain. I was at home on the couch, then went to bed. Or not. I put the shoe back, feeling my heart pound. Maybe I went out at night, but why? And why don't I remember? I checked the jacket dry. Jeans in the bedroom too. Only boots. I looked at them like they were evidence in some stupid detective story and didn't know what to think. It was strange. Too weird. I arrived at the workshop at 8. The rain left puddles on the asphalt, and I carefully walked around them so as not to wet the sneakers that I had put on instead of boots. Bobby was already there, tinkering with some Chevrolet. He raised his head and nodded at me. "The weather is crap, right?" he said, wiping his hands with a rag. "Yeah," I answered, hanging my jacket on a hook. I didn't talk about boots. For what? He would just laugh or ask if I drink at night. I took on the old Toyota. Someone had gone too far with the gas, and now the box crunched like dry leaves. Work went slowly. My hands did everything automatically, but my head was somewhere else. Wet boots. I tried to remember. Maybe I went out for something. For mail? No, I checked the box during the day. Then what? I over-tightened the bolt and nearly stripped the threads. By lunchtime, I was done with the box. The client took the car, muttering something about the weather, and I went to the back room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't eat it again. Instead, I sat staring at the wall and thought to myself, what's happening to me? First, this loss of consciousness yesterday, now the boots. I began to suspect myself of something strange, but what? Maybe I'm going crazy. I rubbed my temples, feeling my head throbbing. And then Tom came into the workshop. I heard his voice before I saw it, loud, self-confident, as always. He slammed the door, shouted something to Bobby, then came up to me. Tall, in a leather jacket, with that smile of his that sometimes makes me want to hit him. "Hey, old man," he said, tapping me on the shoulder. I was sitting on a workbench, and he stood next to me with his arms crossed. "How are you?" "Okay," I answered, looking at him. "Why are you here?" "Yes, I was passing by," he shrugged. I decided to drop by and chat. I nodded, but there was something in his tone that I didn't like. He looked tense, although he hid it behind his usual chatter. "Listen, by the way," he lowered his voice and leaned closer. "I had something strange this morning. I found a letter under the door. No signature, no nothing. It's just a piece of paper, and it says something like, 'Stay away.' A threat, in short." I froze, but tried not to show it. "Seriously?" I asked, raising my eyebrows. "From whom?" "I have no idea," he chuckled, but I saw that he was uncomfortable. "Maybe some kind of competitor. I've had big deals lately, you know. Not everyone likes it." "Yeah," I said, looking to the side. "Strange." "That's what I mean." He straightened up and put his hands in his pockets. "Have you heard anything like that? Maybe someone in town is weird?" "No," I lied, shrugging. "I'm hearing it for the first time." He nodded, but looked at me a little longer than necessary. Then he smiled and slapped me on the back. "Okay, be there," he said. "If you hear anything, let me know." "Of course," I answered, and he left. I watched him get into his black BMW and drive away, leaving a trail of exhaust behind him. Letter. Threat. I pretended to be surprised, but everything inside me tightened. Tom is an old friend of mine. I've known him since school. He's not one to make things up. But why does this seem personal to me? I shook my head, driving away the thoughts. It's none of my business. Or mine. The day passed slowly. I finished another car, cleaned up the workshop, but everything was in a fog. The boots, Tom's letter, everything was spinning in my head like gears that didn't fit. When I arrived home, it was already getting dark. Emily was there. I heard her walking around the kitchen. I walked in and threw my backpack at the door. She was standing at the stove, heating something in the microwave. Her hair is pulled back into a ponytail, and she is wearing an old t-shirt and jeans. She turned around and looked at me, but did not smile. "Hello," she said quietly, almost in a whisper. "Hi," I replied, taking off my jacket. She turned away and took the plate out of the microwave. I looked at her and felt the distance between us growing. She didn't even ask how my day was. She didn't look me in the eye. "How was the corporate party?" I asked, just to break the silence. "Fine," she shrugged without turning around. "Tired." "I see," I said, and that was all. She took the plate and went into the living room. I heard the TV turn on and some commercials started playing. I stayed in the kitchen, opened a beer, and sat down at the table. She acted even more distant than before. Not cold, not evil, just empty. It's like I'm not here. I looked at my hands, at the dirt under my nails that I didn't have time to wash off, and thought about my shoes, about Tom, about her. What's wrong with me? I began to suspect myself of something strange, but could not understand what, and her detachment only made everything worse. I finished my beer, put the can on the table, and went to bed. She stayed downstairs, and I didn't call her. I woke up in pain. Not strong, but sharp, as if someone had poked me with a hot needle. He opened his eyes. It was dark. Only the weak light of a lantern made its way through the curtains. The clock on the nightstand showed 4 in the morning. Emily slept next to him, turned to the wall. Her breathing was quiet, almost inaudible. I sat up, rubbing my hand, and then I felt a burning sensation on the skin, just above my wrist. I turned on the lamp and squinted into the light. There was a red burn on his right arm, right under the sleeve of his t-shirt. Small, the size of a coin, but fresh. The skin around it was inflamed and shiny, as if I had just been burned. I stared at him, trying to understand what was happening. When did this happen? I didn't remember anything, not a hot frying pan, not an accidental burn in the workshop. Yesterday I went to bed after dinner and didn't even turn on the stove. I rubbed my eyes, hoping it was a dream, but the burn didn't go away. My heart was pounding and my head was buzzing. I stood up, trying not to wake Emily, and went to the bathroom. Under the bright light of the lamp, the burn looked even worse, a bubble on the skin, red edges. I turned on the tap and put my hand under the cold water. The pain subsided, but did not disappear. And then I noticed the smell. Faint but distinct gasoline. It came from my t-shirt, the same one I slept in. I raised it to my nose and inhaled it like gasoline, sharp, caustic. I froze, looking at my reflection in the mirror. The eyes are red, the hair is disheveled, the face is pale. What's happening? I wasn't in the workshop at night. Didn't touch the cans, didn't tinker with the cars. I took off my t-shirt and threw it on the floor. The jeans that were lying by the bed also smelled, not so much, but there was a smell. I stood in the bathroom, wearing only my underpants, and felt panic creeping into my throat. This is not normal. In a panic, I began to look for an explanation. Maybe he spilled gasoline in the workshop yesterday and the smell got absorbed. No, I washed my hands and changed clothes at home. Then what? Did I go somewhere at night? But why? And why don't I remember? I returned to the bedroom and took the phone. 4:15. Emily didn't move. She was sleeping soundly, as if she didn't feel anything. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at my hands. Burned gasoline. It didn't fit in my head. I tried to remember last night: dinner, beer, TV. Then I went to bed. Everything is normal. Or not. I got up and went downstairs. The kitchen was quiet, except for the rain still pattering on the window. I turned on the light, checked the table, the stove, nothing hot, nothing that could burn. Garage. I opened the door and looked inside. My Jeep was standing still, dry and clean. A can of gasoline in the corner is closed, untouched. I rubbed my face, feeling my palms tremble. Returning to the house, I sat on the sofa and turned on the TV to distract myself. The sound was turned off, but the picture flashed: an advertisement, some kind of show. I looked at the screen but didn't see him. The burn throbbed, the smell of gasoline seemed to permeate everything around. I got up, opened the window, cold air rushed inside, but it didn't get any better. By 6 I had made coffee, although I was no longer going to sleep. Emily went downstairs and walked silently into the kitchen. She looked tired, hair in a ponytail, dark circles under her eyes. We didn't say a word to each other. She took the mug, poured herself some coffee, and went back upstairs. I was left alone, looking at my hand. The burn was still burning. I went to the workshop at 8. The rain had stopped, but the sky was gray and heavy. Bobby was already there, tinkering with some dodge. He nodded at me, but didn't chat. He'd been talking less lately. I took on an old Mazda. The client complained about overheating. Work went slowly. My hands did everything themselves, but my head was busy with something else. Burn. Petrol. I kept looking at my hand, covering it with the sleeve of my jacket so that Bobby wouldn't notice. By 10 I finished with the Mazda and went to the back room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't eat it. My stomach was clenching at the thought of food. I was sitting looking at the wall when the TV in the corner of the workshop suddenly came to life. Bobby turned it on, muttering something about the news. I raised my head, and the screen showed the smoking remains of the car. Black metal, broken glass, a fire that has not yet been completely extinguished. A car burned down in the Lake Street area tonight, the reporter said, standing in front of the charred carcass. The police have not yet established the cause of the fire, but the owner turned out to be local realtor Thomas Carter. I froze. Volume. His car. I looked at the screen, feeling the blood pounding in my temples. It wasn't far from here, a couple of miles. At night, I looked at my hand at the burn. No, it's a coincidence. Cannot be related. The phone rang, and I almost dropped it. The name appeared on the screen: Tom. I answered, trying to keep my voice even. Jake, did you hear? His voice was loud, angry. My car burned down. Damn BMW, I just paid for it. Yes, I just saw it on the news, I said, clutching the phone. What's happened? No idea, he almost shouted. I parked it near the house at night, and in the morning there was a pile of ashes. The police say it's arson, motherfucker. They're competitors, Jake, I'm sure. My deals are large, some people don't like them. Seriously? I nodded, although he didn't see me. This is crap, Tom. That's not the right word, he exhaled. Okay, I'll figure it out. How are you? Okay, I lied. Hang in there. He hung up, and I stood there looking at the phone. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. Volume. His car burned down. At night, I have a burn and smell of gasoline. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts. It's not related. Can't be. I'm not an arsonist. I was at home, sleeping, or not. I went back to work, but my hands were shaking. I finished another car, cleaned up the workshop, but everything was in a fog. Bobby asked if I was okay. I muttered that I was, and he backed off. At home, I sat down on the sofa and turned on the TV. The news was still talking about Tom's car, footage of the fire, the reporter's voice. I looked but didn't listen. The burn on my arm was throbbing, and the smell of gasoline still seemed to hang in the air, even though I had changed my clothes. And then I heard him. Voice. The same one who whispered to me about Emily. Low, cold, right in the head. This is just the beginning, he said. I froze, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Shut up, I muttered, clenching my fists. This is my imagination. Just stress. But the voice did not go away, it died down, leaving behind an echo. I sat in the dark, looking at my hands, not knowing what to believe. I woke up with a heaviness in my chest. Not from the burn, it was already healing, turning into a pale spot on the skin, but from something else that had been growing inside me the last few days. The morning was cold, gray, as if March had decided to freeze everything around. Emily left early. I heard the door slam, her Hyundai starting up and driving away. She didn't even say goodbye. I lay looking at the ceiling and felt the silence oppressive. The doubts did not start yesterday. They had been smoldering for weeks, from that bracelet under the seat, from her trembling voice, from her aloofness. After I blacked out and woke up with a burning sensation in my chest, wet boots, and the smell of gasoline, I began to notice more. How she avoids my eyes. How her job sounds like an excuse. How she leaves and comes back without saying a word. I told myself that this was nonsense, that I was making this up. But then Tom called about his burned-out car, and something in me broke. I started to doubt her. In us. I stood up, rubbing my face. The bathroom mirror showed me a shadow of the Jake I used to be. My eyes were sunken, stubble appeared on my chin. I hadn't shaved for a couple of days. I splashed water, but it didn't help. I made coffee in the kitchen, poured it into a mug, but didn't drink it. It got cold while I was looking out the window. The rain had stopped, but the puddles on the street glittered like shards of glass. I thought about Emily, about how she has changed. She used to smile at me in the morning and kiss me before leaving. Now nothing. Emptiness. I arrived at the workshop at 9. Bobby was there, tinkering with some Ford. He nodded at me, but did not chat. He was already used to me being more silent than usual. I took on the old Honda. The engine was beating like my heart. Work went slowly. My hands were turning the nuts, but my thoughts were somewhere else. Emily said she had a meeting with a client today. Will be delayed again. I remembered her voice, cold, abrupt. She didn't even look at me when she said that yesterday. By lunchtime, I was done with the Honda. The client took it, throwing a thank you over his shoulder, and I went to the back room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't feel like eating it. I sat staring at the wall and felt the doubts eating away at me. What if she's not at work? What if her projects and meetings are lies? I remembered the bracelet, a man's, expensive one. She said it was for a client, but I didn't believe it. Not completely. And then Tom, his car, his threatening letter. Why does it seem to me that everything is connected? I couldn't sit anymore. He stood up, took his jacket, and told Bobby that he would be back later. He just nodded. He no longer asked what was wrong with me. I got into my Jeep and started the engine. I decided to follow her. Myself. No plan, no thoughts, just go and see. Her office was in the center, 10 minutes away. I knew where she parked. I knew her schedule. If she's there, I'll see. If not, I didn't want to think about it. The road was empty. I drove, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Snippets were spinning in my head, her laughter in the bar 5 years ago, her yes by the lake, her cold look yesterday. I turned on the radio to drown them out, but turned it off after a minute. The music was just annoying. When I arrived at the office, it was already getting dark. Her Hyundai was parked at the entrance, next to other cars. I parked across the street and turned off the engine. I waited. The minutes dragged on like hours. I looked at the glass doors of her company, at the people coming out, some women in formal suits, men with briefcases. Emily was not there. I began to think that I had come in vain, that it was stupid when she left. Black skirt, white blouse, hair in a ponytail. She looked tired, but beautiful as always. I swallowed, feeling my throat tighten. And then he appeared. Volume. I recognized him immediately, tall, in his leather jacket, with that grin. He followed her out, said something, and she laughed. They stopped at her car, and I saw her hug him. Not in a friendly way, not by chance, a real hug, warm, close. He hugged her back, his hand lingering on her back. My world collapsed. I sat, clutching the steering wheel, and watched. My heart was pounding. My blood was roaring in my ears. It wasn't a client, not a colleague. It was Tom, my friend, her lover. I felt like everything I believed in was falling apart at the seams. She lied to me. All this time, work, projects, corporate events, a lie. I watched them talk, how she smiled at him, how he touched her shoulder. I wanted to jump out of the car, scream, hit, but I couldn't move. They separated after a minute. She got into the Hyundai, he into his new car, apparently rented after the fire. I waited until they left and only then started the engine. My hands were shaking, my chest was burning, as if I had swallowed coals. I drove home without seeing the road. One thing was spinning in my head: she was with him. With Tom. I burst into the house and threw the keys on the table. Anger washed over me like a wave. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a plate, the one with flowers that she loved, and threw it on the floor. It shattered into pieces, fragments splashed across the tiles. I looked at them, feeling rage boiling inside me. How could she? After everything, our years, our promises, our wedding. I clenched my fists and kicked the chair. It fell with a roar. And then everything went dark. I didn't understand what happened. I just turned off like a light bulb. When I woke up, I was standing at the table, holding a pen in my hand. In front of me lay a sheet of paper, and on it were crooked letters. "You will pay. Stay away." I blinked at him. It was my handwriting, but I didn't remember how I wrote it. There was a burning sensation in my chest again, but now it was different, cold, sharp. I crumpled the sheet and threw it in the trash. Breathing was heavy, hands were shaking. What's wrong with me? I sat down on a chair, trying to compose myself. The anger was still seething, but now it was mixed with something else: fear. Emily returned an hour later. I heard her come in and throw her bag at the door. She walked into the kitchen and stopped when she saw the broken plates. "What is this?" she asked, looking at me. Her voice was cold, but there was a hint of worry in it. "Dropped it," I lied, without looking up. She looked at me more closely. I sat hunched over with my hands on the table. "You're acting strange, Jake," she said, crossing her arms. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing," I snapped, feeling my anger flare up again. "I'm just tired." "You don't believe me, do you?" Her voice became sharper. "I see the way you look at me. You think I'm hiding something." I raised my head and met her gaze. The blue eyes I loved now seemed foreign. "Are you hiding it?" I asked, and my voice trembled. She froze, then shook her head. "You're unbearable," she said quietly, and went upstairs. The bedroom door slammed. I was left alone, looking at the fragments on the floor. Doubts, anger, pain, everything was mixed inside. I saw her with Tom. I knew the truth. And this piece of paper that I didn't remember writing scared me more than her lies. The day dragged on like rubber. I stood in the workshop, bending over the engine of an old Chevrolet, turning nuts, although my thoughts were far away. The sun filtered through the dim windows, casting long shadows on the concrete floor. Bobby was fiddling around in the corner somewhere, humming some country music under his breath, his voice humming like an old tractor. Usually this was annoying, but today I didn't even notice. One thing was spinning in my head: Emily and Tom. What I saw yesterday outside her office. Their hug. Her smile. My world shattered into pieces. I tightened the bolt and wiped my hands with a rag. The oil ingrained into the skin, the black stripes under the nails became like a tattoo. I looked at my hands and wondered how it got to this point. A month ago, I would have said that we could cope, that this is just a difficult period: work, fatigue, minor quarrels. But now, after the bracelet, after her lies, after Tom, I felt like a fool, a husband who does not see what is happening under his nose. "Jake, are you alive there?" Bobby shouted, pulling me out of my thoughts. He stood at the workbench, holding a wrench. "Yeah," I muttered, without looking at him. "I'm just thinking." "Well, think faster," he chuckled. "The client has already called. He wants a car by evening." I nodded and went back to work. The Chevrolet engine was stubborn. The valves were knocking like my nerves. I fiddled with it until lunchtime, but I finished it. The client, a bald man in a cheap suit, took the car, throwing me a couple of crumpled tens. I put them in my pocket and went to the utility room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't eat it. My stomach was clenching at the thought of food. Instead, I sat staring at the wall. Yesterday, I broke a plate. I wrote a letter to Tom, or not me, but someone inside me. I still didn't understand how it happened. Pen, paper, crooked letters, everything is like a fog. Emily noticed my condition and accused me of mistrust, but she didn't know the truth. I didn't know that I saw her with him. I wanted to ask, to shout, but I couldn't. Not then. In the evening, I went home. The road was empty, only the wind was blowing garbage along the side of the road. I turned on the radio, but turned it off after a minute. The music hurt my ears. The house was quiet. Emily wasn't back yet, but I knew she would be soon. She mentioned it was a short day. I decided to cook dinner, not because he wanted to please her, but to keep his hands busy, so as not to think. I took the chicken out of the freezer and set it to defrost. I cut the potatoes and threw them into the pan. I did everything slowly, methodically, like in a workshop. The knife slid over the vegetables, steam rising from the stove. I looked at him and remembered her face, how she laughed with Tom. The way her hand lay on his shoulder. I squeezed the knife tighter than necessary and almost cut myself. Emily arrived at 7. I heard the door slam and her heels click on the floor. She entered the kitchen and threw her bag on a chair. Her hair was disheveled, her blouse was wrinkled. She looked tired, but I saw something else in her. Lie. Hi, she said, looking at the stove. Are you cooking? Yes, I answered without turning around. I thought, let's eat together. Okay, she nodded, but her voice was dry. She sat down at the table, took out her phone, and started scrolling. I looked at her out of the corner of my eye, feeling the anger smoldering inside. She didn't even ask how my day was. She didn't look at me. I just sat there, staring at the screen. I was silent as I put the food on the table. Chicken, potatoes, some salad, nothing special, but I tried. We ate in silence. She picked at her fork, and I looked at my plate. The tension grew like the air before a thunderstorm. You came late again yesterday, I finally said, putting down my fork. The voice came out harsher than I intended. She looked up and frowned. I had a client, she answered with a shrug. I told you so. You always say that. I clenched my fists under the table. Clients, projects, meetings, and I sit here and wait. Jake, don't start, she sighed, pushing the plate away. I'm tired. But I don't. I stood up, feeling the blood pounding in my temples. I'm in the workshop every day, tinkering with iron, and when I come home, it's empty. You are out there somewhere, with someone there, and I don't even know who. She looked at me, her eyes narrowed. You again. The voice became cold. I said it's work. Don't you believe me? Should I believe you? The words came out on their own, and I could no longer stop. You're lying to me, Emily. I know. She opened her mouth to answer, but I lost control. Something inside me clicked, and I was no longer myself. I stepped towards the desk drawer where the photographs lay, the ones I found in my jacket pocket that morning. I didn't remember how they got there, but they were real. Emily and Tom, at the office. Hugs, smiles. I grabbed them and threw them on the table in front of her. What is this? The voice was not mine, low, angry. She stared at the pictures, her face turning pale. My hands shook and my fork fell to the floor. Where from? She raised her eyes to me. There was shock in them. Have you hired a detective? I don't need a detective. I slammed my fist on the table. The plates clinked. I saw you myself. You and Tom, at your office. You hugged him, Emily. She jumped up, and the chair fell with a crash. Were you following me? Her voice broke into a scream. You're sick, Jake. What are you doing? I stepped towards her, feeling anger overflowing me. You lie to my face, you sleep in the same bed with me, and you sleep with him. How long, Emily? Months? Year? It's none of your business, she screamed, her eyes shining with tears. You have no right to talk to me like that. I don't have the right. I almost laughed, but the laugh came out bitter. You are my wife, or no longer. She froze, looking at me. Then she shook her head, her voice falling to a whisper. It's over, Jake, she said. I'm leaving. She grabbed her bag and ran out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam and her car start and drive away. I was left alone, standing in the middle of the kitchen. The photographs were on the table, the plates were getting cold. I looked at them, feeling the anger give way to emptiness. And then I heard him. The voice in my head is the same, cold, angry. "She betrayed you," he whispered. "You're a weakling if you let this go." "Shut up," I muttered, squeezing my temples. But he didn't leave. He laughed, quietly, somewhere inside. I fought with him, tried to drown him out, but he was stronger. I sat down on a chair and covered my face with my hands. She left. It's over. I spent the night on the sofa. I didn't sleep, I just lay there, looking into the darkness. The clock was ticking, the wind was knocking on the windows. I felt empty, but the voice did not go away. He whispered something, but I couldn't understand the words. At some point, I dozed off and had a dream. I saw Emily. She stood in our bedroom, her back to me. I approached and called her, but she didn't turn around. And then he appeared, not me, but someone else. Tall, dark, with my face, but not mine. He grabbed her by the neck and squeezed. She screamed, but the sound was muffled, as if underwater. I tried to stop him, but my hands wouldn't obey. He choked her, and I watched. I woke up in a cold sweat. My heart was pounding. My t-shirt was stuck to my back. The clock showed 3 in the morning. I sat down, breathing heavily, looking into space. It was a dream, but it seemed real. Too real. I got up, went to the kitchen, and poured water. My hand shook as I raised the glass to my lips. She left, and I was left with this, with anger, with a voice, with a nightmare. I sat in the waiting room, looking at the threadbare carpet under my feet. The psychologist's office was in an old building in the city center. The walls were painted a boring beige. The smell of coffee and dust hung in the air. I came here because I didn't know where to go anymore. After Emily left, after all the strange things, the blackouts, the wet shoes, the burn, that letter I didn't remember writing, I felt like I was going crazy. I needed help, or at least an explanation. The door opened, and a woman of about 50 came out to me. Gray hair pulled back into a low bun, thin-framed glasses, dark sweater. She looked calm, but there was something sharp in her gaze, as if she had already seen right through me. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm Dr. Linda Crow. Come on in." I nodded and stood up, feeling my knees shaking. The office was small, a sofa, an armchair, a table with a lamp, a couple of shelves with books. There was a painting hanging on the wall with some abstract spots, blue and green. I sat on the sofa, she sat in the chair opposite, putting a notebook on her lap. "So, Jake," she began, looking at me over her glasses. "Why are you here?" I swallowed, not knowing where to start. My hands were on my knees. I squeezed them to hide my trembling. I have problems," I finally said. "I don't know how to explain." "Try it," she smiled slightly, but not insistently. "Just tell me what's bothering you." I looked at my hands, at the calluses, at the pale burn mark. "I have blackouts," I began, my voice hoarse. "I don't remember what I'm doing. Sometimes I wake up and something is wrong. For example," she bowed her head, her pen hovering over the notepad. "For example, this morning I found a burn on my hand," I said, showing her my wrist. "I don't remember how I got it." And the clothes smelled of gasoline. She looked at my hand, her eyebrows raised slightly. "You work with machines, right?" she asked. "Could this be related to your profession?" "No," I shook my head. "I'm a car mechanic, yes, but I wasn't in the workshop that night. I slept at home, or thought he was sleeping." She wrote something down. "Was this the only case?" "No," I rubbed my neck, feeling the heat rise to my face. "More boots. They were wet and muddy, although I didn't go out in the rain. And yesterday, I don't remember how I returned home. I was driving to the restaurant and woke up on the sofa." She nodded, her gaze becoming more attentive. "Tell me more about this incident with the restaurant," she asked. "What do you remember before you woke up?" I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. "I went there in the evening," I said. "I wanted, I don't know, to distract myself. I sat in the car, looking at the windows, and then everything went dark. It's like he turned off. And you don't remember how you returned home, she clarified. No, I shook my head. I just opened my eyes and I'm already home. The clock showed midnight. She wrote something down again, her pen moving quietly over the paper. Jake, she said, putting down her notebook. It sounds like episodes of loss of consciousness. Have you seen a doctor? Maybe it's medical. No, I shrugged. I didn't think about it. I'm healthy, I think. I don't just faint. But these failures are not just fainting spells, right? Her voice was calm, but there was a sense of urgency in it. You wake up with burns and wet shoes. It's something more. I nodded, feeling my throat tighten. Yes, I managed. And that scares me. I don't know what I'm doing at these moments. How did you feel before this? She asked. Is there some kind of signal? Maybe dizziness, weakness? I thought about it. The voice in my head, the one that whispered about Emily, about Tom, flashed through my memory, but I didn't speak. This is too much. She'll think I'm crazy. Sometimes I feel dizzy, I said instead. It's like I'm losing my balance. But not always. Okay, she nodded. And after? When are you coming back? I feel strange. I rubbed my temples. Tired, and it burns in my chest. Not much, but unpleasant. It burns in my chest, she repeated, writing it down. Is this a physical sensation or more emotional? Physical, I answered. It was like breathing in hot air. She looked at me, her eyes narrowed. Jake, she said slowly, are these failures related to some events? Maybe stress? I froze. Emily. Volume. Their hug. Broken plate. I felt how her departure was tearing me apart, but I didn't want to talk. Maybe, I said evasively, I have problems at home. Do you want to tell me? She leaned a little closer. Sometimes these things affect us more than we think. My wife has left, I blurted out. A few days ago, we had a fight. Because of what? Her voice was soft, but I felt that she was digging deeper. Because of trust, I clenched my fists. I saw her with someone. She said it was over and left. It's hard, she said, nodding. And how did you feel afterwards? It's bad, I smiled bitterly, angry, empty, don't know. Did the failures begin before or after that? She asked. Before, I answered, but after that it got worse. More often. She fell silent, writing something down. I looked at her hand, at the even lines in the notebook, and felt naked. It's like she sees everything I hide. Jake, she said finally, looking up, what you describe may be related to stress. Loss of control, memory lapses are sometimes a reaction to strong emotions. Your mind is trying to cope. Do you think I'm going crazy? I asked, looking at her. No, she smiled softly. I think you are going through something difficult. But we need to understand what is happening. Are you ready to talk further? I nodded, although everything inside me sank. Vote. I didn't say anything about them. About the way he whispers, laughs, commands. Okay, she said. Let's try to remember again. These failures, do they happen at certain times? Day, night? Night, most often, I answered. I wake up and something is wrong. Do you have anything in common? She bowed her head. Place, people? No, I lied. Emily, volume. But I didn't want to drag them into this. Just chaos. Chaos, she repeated, writing it down. Jake, I want you to think. Those moments, do you feel like yourself when you come back? I froze. The question hit like a hammer. Yourself? I didn't know. Sometimes, I said quietly. Sometimes, it was as if someone else was there. She looked at me carefully, but did not press. It's an interesting feeling, she said. We can come back to this later. In the meantime, what do you want from our meetings? I understand, I answered, looking into her eyes. What's wrong with me, and how to stop it? Okay, she nodded. We'll start small. Let's try to track these failures. Write down when they happen and how you feel. Okay, I said, although I wasn't sure I could. She smiled and closed the notebook. That's enough for today, she said. See you in a week? Yes, I nodded, standing up. I left the office feeling lighter, but only slightly. She didn't know everything. I hid the voices, hid the anger, but I told the truth I wanted to understand, and I was afraid that I wouldn't like the answer. The day started with the smell of oil and metal. I was standing in the workshop, bending over an old Dodge that had been driven that morning. The sun streamed through the cracks in the gates, specks of dust danced in the air. Bobby was muttering something in the corner, clinking his instruments, but I didn't listen. The last days passed in a kind of fog after Emily left, after the conversation with the psychologist. I wrote down my failures as she asked, but it didn't help. They happened more often, and each time I felt worse. I tightened the bolt and wiped my hands with a rag. Work was my anchor, the only thing that kept me afloat. But today, even she couldn't save me. Yesterday, I found a piece of paper in my jeans pocket crumpled, with some scribbles on it. I didn't remember how it got there, so I threw it away, but the feeling remained. Something was wrong. With me. With my life. By lunchtime, I was done with the Dodge. The client, a man with a thick beard, took the car, throwing me a couple of tens. I put them in my pocket and went to the utility room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't eat it. I lost my appetite in the morning. I was sitting looking at the wall when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I answered, thinking it was a client. Jake. The voice was male hoarse. This is Tom. I tensed, clutching the phone. Hi, I said, trying to sound even. Did something happen? No, I'm just calling, he chuckled, but I heard something strange in his voice. Listen, do you happen to know who is selling the old Mustang? They told me here that you are aware. Mustang, I frowned. No, I haven't heard. Who said that? Yes, some guy, he hesitated. I called in the morning and said that there was a car in an abandoned garage on the outskirts. Like, you know. I'm hearing it for the first time, I answered, feeling a cold run down my back. This is strange. Yeah, he grinned. Okay, I'll check it myself. If anything happens, I'll let you know. Be careful, I said, and he hung up. I looked at the phone, not understanding why this bothered me. Abandoned garage. I didn't tell anyone anything. But Tom had already left my mind. I returned to work, trying to distract myself. The day passed slowly. I finished another car, cleaned up the workshop, but my thoughts were spinning. By 5, I went home. The road was empty, only the wind blew dust along the side of the road. At home, I threw my backpack at the door, opened a beer, and sat down on the sofa. The TV was showing the news, but I didn't turn on the sound. I just watched the pictures flash by. And then everything went dark. I didn't understand what happened. I just turned off, as if someone had flipped a switch. The world disappeared, and I fell into the void. When I woke up, I was lying on the living room floor. My head was buzzing, and my throat was dry. I sat down, looking around. The clock on the wall showed 9 in the evening. 4 hours have passed. 4 hours that I didn't remember. I stood up, feeling weak in my legs, and went to the window. My Jeep was parked outside the house, but something was wrong. My shoes by the door were wet, with mud on the soles. I didn't go out. Or did you go out? I rubbed my face, trying to remember. Nothing. Emptiness. Just a slight burning sensation in my chest, like that time after the restaurant. I went to the kitchen, poured water, and drank it in one gulp. My hands were shaking, but I noticed something else. Dirt under my nails, fresh, as if I had been digging in the ground. I looked at them, feeling panic creeping into my throat. Where have I been? What did you do? The phone rang, and I almost dropped my glass. Her name flashed on the screen. Emily. I froze, looking at him. She hasn't called since that fight, since that dinner, when she left. I answered, holding the phone to my ear. Jake. Her voice was quiet, trembling. It's you. Yes, I said, trying to sound calm. What's happened? Have you seen Tom? She asked, and I felt my heart skip a beat. No, I lied, clutching the phone. And what? He disappeared, she hesitated. We talked during the day. He said that he was going somewhere on business. And now he doesn't answer. I'm worried. When did you say that? I asked, although I already knew the answer. In the morning, she said. He mentioned you. Something about a car. He called me, I admitted, but quickly added, he asked about the Mustang, but I don't know anything. Okay, she breathed. If you hear something, tell me. Of course, I replied, and she hung up. I stood looking at the phone. Tom is missing. Emily is worried. And I didn't know where I was for 4 hours. Dirt under the nails, wet shoes. I went to the Jeep, opened the door, the seat was wet. There were traces of dirt on the floor. I went somewhere. But where? I returned to the house and sat down on the sofa. My heart was pounding, my thoughts were confused. Volume. Abandoned garage. I tried to remember, but nothing came. Only emptiness. And fear. I closed my eyes, trying to calm down, but a picture flashed before my eyes, a dark garage, rusty walls, the smell of gasoline. I opened my eyes, feeling sweat running down my back. It wasn't a dream, or was it? I lay down without undressing, looking at the ceiling. Emily called about Tom. I lied that I didn't see him, but something stirred inside. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know what was wrong with me. But the mud, the boots, the car, everything screamed that I was somewhere, and that scared me more than her leaving. The day started with noise outside the window. I was standing at the sink, washing my morning coffee mug, when I heard the sirens. They were approaching, cutting the air like a knife through glass. I looked out and 2 police cars raced down the street and turned the corner. My heart skipped a beat, but I pushed the thoughts away. This is not about me. Can't be. I dried my hands with a towel and went into the workshop, trying not to think about yesterday, about the dirt under my nails, about Emily's call, about Tom. The workshop was quiet. Bobby hasn't arrived yet. He called in the morning and said that he would be delayed because of the doctor. I turned on the light and walked to the workbench. The old Ford was waiting for me. The client was complaining about the brakes. I set to work, hoping it would drown out the noise in my head. The keys jingled in his hands, the metal creaked, but there was no peace. After yesterday's failure, 4 hours that I did not remember, I felt like I was on the edge of an abyss. Emily said Tom was missing. I lied that I didn't see him, but the mud on my boots and the wet seat of the Jeep told a different story. I finished the Ford by noon. The client took the car, throwing me a couple of crumpled bills, and I went to the back room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't eat it. I lost my appetite yesterday. I was sitting looking at the wall when the workshop door creaked. I raised my head, and there was a woman standing in the doorway. About 40, short dark hair, formal suit. She stepped inside, her boots clicking on the concrete. Jake Wilson, she asked. Her voice was smooth, but there was steel in it. Yes, I answered, standing up. Who are you? Detective Sarah Connors. She showed the badge that flashed in the light of the lamp. I have a couple of questions for you. Can we talk? I nodded, feeling my insides shrink. She walked to the workbench and looked around the workshop. Nice place, she said, but I knew it wasn't a compliment. How long have you been working here? 10 years, I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. What's happened? She looked at me, her eyes as sharp as a blade. Do you know Thomas Carter? She asked, crossing her arms. Yes, I shrugged. He's my friend. From school. When was the last time you saw him? Her tone became a little firmer. I thought about it, pretending to remember. A couple of days ago, I think, I said. He came here and chatted. About what? She bowed her head. About his car, I answered. It burned down recently. He thought they were competitors. Yes, we are aware of the arson. She nodded. And yesterday? You haven't talked to him. No, I lied, looking into her eyes. Only in the morning by phone. He asked about some car, a Mustang. I said I don't know. She wrote something down in a small notebook that she took out of her pocket. Where were you yesterday from 5 to 9 in the evening? She asked without looking up. At home, I answered confidently. I left the workshop, sat on the sofa, and watched TV. One, she clarified. Yes, I nodded. Wife. We separated recently. I see, she looked at me, her gaze becoming more attentive. No one can confirm that you were at home? No, I said, feeling sweat break out on my back. but I didn't go out anywhere. She was silent, writing something down. I stood there, trying not to move, although everything was boiling inside. Does she know? No, it can't. I didn't know where I was. Mr. Wilson, she finally said, closing the notebook. We have some strange cases. Arson of Mr. Carter's car. A threatening letter he found at home, and now he's gone. Lost. I pretended to be surprised, although Emily had already called. Seriously. Yes, she nodded. He hasn't been seen since yesterday. Are you sure you don't know anything? I'm sure, I answered, holding her gaze. I would say if there was something. She looked at me for a long time, as if she was trying to find a crack. Okay, she said finally. If you remember something, call. She gave me a business card, turned, and left. I watched her silhouette disappear behind the door and felt my legs give way. I sat down on a chair, clutching the business card in my hand. Arson. Threats. Tom's missing. She's digging, and I'm in her line of sight. But I remained confident. I didn't know anything. Or did he know? The day passed in a kind of daze. I finished another car, cleaned up the workshop, but everything was in a fog. By 6, I went home. The road twisted past fields, the wind blew clouds across the sky. I turned on the radio, but turned it off. The silence was better. At home, I threw my backpack at the door, opened a beer, and sat down on the sofa. The TV was showing the news, and I turned up the volume. The reporter was standing near a building, with police cars flashing behind him. Tonight, Thomas Carter, a local realtor, was found in an abandoned garage on the outskirts of the city, he said. He was discovered by Emily Wilson, who called the police. Carter was beaten and tied to a chair, but alive. Police are investigating. I froze, the beer almost slipped out of my hand. Emily found Tom, in the garage, beaten, tied. I looked at the screen, feeling the blood pounding in my temples. Abandoned garage, the one he was talking about. The phone rang, and I was startled. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I answered, holding the phone to my ear. Jake, her voice trembled, almost breaking. Have you seen the news? Yes, I answered, trying to sound calm. What's happened? I found Tom, she sobbed. He was in some garage, tied up. He got beat up, Jake. He's in the hospital. How did you find him? I asked, clutching the phone. He called me this morning, she said. He said he was going to look at the car. And then he disappeared. I went to where he said, and he was there. Oh my God, I said. Is he okay? Alive, she exhaled. But he swears he saw you. I froze, feeling a chill running down my spine. Me? I asked again. This is nonsense, Emily. I was at home. I know, she hesitated. But he's confident. The police were asking about you. I talked to her, I said. The detective came. I don't know anything. Okay, she sobbed quietly. I'm shocked. Hold on, I replied, and she hung up. I sat looking at the phone. Tom saw me, in the garage, but I didn't remember anything. Mud on the shoes, failure yesterday, was this connected? I stood up and walked around the room, feeling panic tightening my chest. Police, Emily, volume. Everything was converging on me, but I didn't know why. I was at home, or wasn't it? The day began with silence, but it was deceptive. I stood at the living room window, looking out onto the street where the neighbor's dog, Buddy, was chasing his tail. The morning was cold. The sky was overcast with gray clouds, as if someone had covered the city with a blanket. I held the mug of cold coffee, but didn't drink it. I just twisted it in my hands, feeling my fingers cling to the crack on the edge. After yesterday, the news about Tom, Emily's call, the detective's words, I didn't sleep. I lay on the sofa, looked at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening. But there were no answers. The phone rang at 11. I shuddered, almost dropping my mug. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew who it was. Jake Wilson. The voice on the other end was dry, official. This is Detective Sarah Connors. We need you to come to the station. Right now. For what? I asked, although everything inside me sank. I have questions, she answered. It won't take long. Okay, I said, trying to sound calm. I'll be there soon. I hung up and put my mug on the table. My hands were shaking, but I clenched them into fists. To the station. This is bad. Tom swears he saw me. Emily said the police asked. I went into the bedroom, put on a clean shirt and jacket. The mirror reflected my face pale, with dark circles under my eyes. I looked guilty without even knowing why. The journey to the site took 15 minutes. I drove in silence and didn't turn on the radio. The streets were empty, only the wind blew leaves along the asphalt. The police building stood on the corner, gray with peeling paint. I parked and got out, feeling my legs getting heavy. The inside smelled of coffee and paper. The woman behind the counter nodded at me, pointing down the hallway. Sarah waited in the interrogation room. Small, with bare walls, a table and 2 chairs. She was standing by the window and turned when I entered. "Sit down, Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice level but her eyes sharp. I sat down with my hands clasped on the table. She sat down opposite her and placed the folder in front of her. "Do you know why you are here?" she asked, opening the folder. "I guess," I answered, holding her gaze. "Volume?" "That's right," she nodded. "He's in the hospital, but he can talk. And he's talking about you." "What exactly?" I tried to sound confident, although everything was seething inside. "He claims you lured him into the garage," she said, leafing through the papers. "They said that there was a rare car for sale, and then they beat him and tied him to a chair." "This is nonsense." I shook my head. "I was at home. I told you." "Yes, they did." She looked at me. "But there are inconsistencies. You said you didn't see him yesterday, but he called you this morning." I asked about the Mustang. "And I said I don't know anything," I replied. "This is true." "Maybe," she tilted her head, "but he's sure it was you. He described your voice, your jacket. He even mentioned the scar on his arm." I froze. "The scar is old, from a burn in the workshop a couple of years ago." I hid my hand under the table, but she noticed. "You have such a scar, right?" she asked, her voice becoming firmer. "Yes," I said, "but that doesn't mean anything. Half the city knows about him." "Perhaps," she nodded. "What about setting his car on fire and threatening letters?" "I don't know about that," I answered, feeling sweat break out on my back. "I'm not an arsonist, and I don't write letters." She was silent, looking at me. Then she opened the folder and took out a photo, the charred remains of Tom's BMW. "That was a week ago," she said. "And you, as it turns out, cannot confirm where you were that night." "I was home," I repeated, clenching my fists. "One. Convenient," she chuckled, but did not smile. "And yesterday, from 5 to 9? "Home," I said. "I was watching TV." "And alone again," she closed the folder. "Mr. Wilson, I'm digging deeper because there are too many coincidences here. Arson, threats, assault, and everything revolves around you." "I didn't do anything," I answered, looking into her eyes. "Tom is my friend. Why do I need this?" "Good question," she said. "Maybe you can tell me." The door opened, and I was startled. Emily came in. She looked exhausted, her hair was disheveled, her eyes were red. Tom followed her in hospital pajamas, with his head bandaged. He leaned on a crutch, but his gaze was firm. "It's him." Tom pointed his finger at me, his voice trembling with anger. "He lured me into that garage, beat me up." "Tom, calm down." Sarah raised her hand, but he didn't listen. "I saw him," he shouted. His face, his voice. "He tied me up and left me there. I was home," I snapped, standing up. "You're lying." "That's enough." Sarah stepped between us. "Sit down, both of you." I sat down, feeling the blood pounding in my temples. Emily looked at me, her lips trembling. "Jake," she said quietly, "tell the truth." "I'm telling the truth," I answered, looking at her. "I didn't touch him." She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "It's because of me, right?" She burst out. "Sarah, I have to say, I cheated on him. With Tom. He found out, and maybe that's what got him." I froze, feeling the air being knocked out of my lungs. She confessed. "Right here." "Emily," Sarah looked at her. This is true. Yes, she nodded, wiping away tears. I thought if I told you it would help. Will it help? I smiled bitterly, looking at her. Do you think I beat him because of you? Who else? Tom stepped closer, his voice breaking. You're crazy, Jake. I didn't do anything, I shouted, standing up again. Anger washed over me like a wave. And then everything went dark. I felt like I was losing control, like something inside was taking over. When I spoke, the voice was not mine, low, cold, angry. You're next, I said, looking at Sarah. She froze, her eyes widening. Tom recoiled and Emily screamed. I blinked and the world returned. I stood there, breathing heavily, not understanding what I said. What? Sarah stepped towards me, her hand lay on the holster. Repeat. I I don't know, I muttered, retreating. I didn't say anything. She looked at me, her face became hard. You are free, she said finally. Bye, but don't leave town. I nodded, feeling my legs give way. Emily looked at me with horror, Tom with hatred. I left the room, footsteps echoing in the corridor. At home, I collapsed on the sofa, covering my face with my hands. Her confession, his accusations. My voice is not mine. You're next. I didn't remember how I said it, but I knew it wasn't me. For the first time, I realized that there was someone else living inside me. Someone evil, cold, who does things I can't explain. I sat in the dark, feeling fear tightening my chest. Who is he? And what does he want? The day started with the smell of rain. I stood on the porch of the house, watching the drops run down the glass of the Jeep parked at the entrance. The sky was heavy, gray, as if someone had squeezed all the light out of it. I held a mug of cold coffee in my hands, my fingers clung to its edge, but I didn't drink, I just watched the steam dissolve in the air. After the interrogation at the station, after I realized that someone else was living inside me, I felt empty. Emily left, Tom accused me, the police are watching. And inside there is a voice that I cannot drown out. I put the mug on the railing and rubbed my face. My hands were cold, dirt was still visible under my nails, I washed it yesterday, but it seemed to be ingrained into the skin. I didn't sleep at night, I lay on the sofa, looking into the darkness, trying to figure out who I was. The one who threatened Sarah during the interrogation was not me. Or was it? I wrote it down for the psychologist as she asked, but the paper remained blank, I didn't know what to write. By noon, I went to the workshop. Bobby was there, tinkering with some Toyota. He nodded at me, but did not chat, he was already accustomed to my silence. I took on an old Dodge because a customer was complaining about overheating. The work went slowly, my hands were shaking, but I forced them to move. The keys jingled, the metal creaked, but my thoughts were somewhere else. Emily. Volume. Their hug outside the office. Her confession. His screams in the police station. I over-tightened the bolt and nearly stripped the threads. By 3, I was done with the Dodge. The client took the car, throwing me a couple of crumpled bills, and I went to the back room. The sandwich was in my backpack, but I didn't eat it. I lost my appetite in the morning. I was sitting looking at the wall when I felt it weakness, as if someone had pulled the wire out of the socket. My head began to spin, I grabbed the table, but everything went dark. I turned off like a light bulb and fell into the void. When I woke up, I wasn't me. I was rage. I was standing in a forest house by the lake, an old, rickety one, where Emily and I once spent weekends. The light flickered above the table, dust lay on the floor. I was holding a phone in my hand, my phone, but I didn't remember how I took it. I sent 2 messages. One, Emily, this is Jake. We need to discuss everything. Come to the house by the lake at 11. Second to Tom, Jake, I want to settle everything. Come to the lake house at 11. I wrote quickly, accurately, imitating myself, who I was before. I didn't know this. Jake, who was sitting in the back room, had disappeared. Rage took over. He got into the Jeep, drove to the house, and parked in the shade of the trees. He waited for them, knowing they would come. Emily because she still felt guilty. Tom because he wanted to prove he was right. I stood in the shadows, tall, dark, with my face, but not my heart. There was a knife in his hand, an old, rusty one, found in a drawer in the house. Emily arrived first. Her Hyundai stopped at the house. Headlights illuminated the rickety walls. She came out, wrapped in a coat. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red from tears. She thought she would meet me, Jake, who wanted to talk. She came in and stopped at the door when she saw me. Jake, her voice trembled. She stepped forward. What are you doing? I'm not Jake, I answered, and my voice was as cold as ice on a lake. I stepped towards her. The light fell on my face, mine, but with someone else's eyes. I'm Rage. She froze, her bag falling to the floor. What? She gasped, retreating. Jake, this isn't funny. I said, I'm not Jake. I smiled, but it was not my smile, but his sharp, angry. Sit down. She backed away, but I was faster. I grabbed her wrist and pushed her towards the chair. She screamed, fell into the seat, and her coat flew open. Tom arrived in 5 minutes. His rented Ford pulled up next to him, and he got out, limping on a crutch. The head was still bandaged, but his gaze was firm. He came in, saw Emily, then me. What the hell, Jake? He stepped forward, but froze when he saw the knife. What are you doing? I'm not Jake, I repeated, looking at him. I'm Rage, and you're both here because you betrayed him. Tom stepped back, the crutch hitting the floor. You're crazy, he managed. I knew you were crazy. Sit down, I pointed with a knife to the second chair. He hesitated, but I stepped closer and he sat down, clutching his crutch. Emily looked at me, her eyes full of horror. Jake, please, she began, her voice shaking. No need. We can explain everything. Explain? I laughed, coldly, creepily. You lied to him. You, I nodded at Emily, slept with this piece of shit. And you, I looked at Tom, betrayed your friend. This is wrong, Emily sobbed, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want to. You didn't want to. I leaned towards her. The knife flashed in the light of the lamp. Then why? He blackmailed me. She turned to Tom, her voice breaking. He said he'd tell you if I left. Lie. Tom rushed forward, but I pushed him back onto the chair. She came to me herself. Blame each other, I said, stepping back. I like this show. Emily fell to her knees, begging me. Spare us, she whispered. I'll do anything. Let him go. It's my fault. Your fault. I crossed my arms, looking down at her. What will he say? It's her. Tom bared his teeth. His face turned red. She seduced me. I didn't want to. You didn't want to? Emily jumped up, her voice trembling with anger. You threatened me, and you slept with me. He shouted back. Don't pretend to be a saint. I watched, enjoying their panic. They shouted, accused each other. Their voices echoed in the house. Tom rushed towards the door, throwing away his crutch, but I caught him and punched him in the chest. He collapsed, gasping for air. It's no use running, I said, standing over him. You both are his pain, and I'm here to cut it out. Emily was crying. Tom was moaning on the floor. I looked at them, feeling something dark and cold growing inside me. I played with their fear, making them break. This was my moment. Please, Emily sobbed, her voice shaking. Let us go. I'll do anything. It's too late, I replied, my voice as cold as steel. I stepped towards Tom. He tried to crawl away, but I grabbed him by the collar and jerked him off the floor. You, I put the knife to his throat, looking into his eyes. You slept with his wife. You betrayed your friend. It's her. Tom squeezed out, his face turning red with fear. She wanted it herself. I don't. I didn't let him finish. I hit him quickly, precisely. The knife entered him under the ribs. He screamed, briefly, sharply, and fell back to the floor. Blood gushed onto the boards, dark and glistening in the faint light. Emily screamed, her voice cutting through the silence like a siren. She jumped up and rushed towards him, but I pushed her back onto the chair. No, she screamed. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were full of horror. Volume. I looked at her, feeling something dark and satisfied growing inside me. Tom lay motionless, his eyes glazed over. I leaned towards Emily. Her screams died down to a hoarse whisper. Live with it, I said, looking into her eyes. My voice was low and calm. It's your fault." She froze, her face turned white, tears flowing down her cheeks. I threw the knife away, it clanged on the floor, leaving a bloody trail. I woke up on the floor of the house, not knowing where I was. My head was buzzing, my chest was burning, as if I had inhaled fire. I sat up and blinked, trying to come to my senses. The light bulb blinked overhead, casting shadows. And then I saw it, blood. She was everywhere, on the floor, on my hands, on my jacket. Tom lay in the corner, motionless, with a knife in his side. Emily sat against the wall, curled into a ball, her screams turning into quiet sobs. "No," I whispered, feeling panic overwhelm me. "No, no, no." I stood up, my legs shaking like a newborn deer. I looked at my hands, red, sticky. What have I done? I didn't remember. But the blood, the knife, Tom's dead look, everything screamed that I did it. Or not me. The other one. The one who lives in me. Emily raised her head, her eyes meeting mine. "Jake," her voice was weak, broken. You killed him." "I didn't mean to," I squeezed out, retreating. "I don't. It's not me." But she didn't listen. She screamed again, louder, and I heard them sirens. They were approaching, cutting through the night like a knife. I ran out onto the porch. The headlights blinded me. Police cars surrounded the house. Doors slammed. Voices shouted. "Hands up." To the ground. I raised my hands, feeling tears burning my eyes. "I didn't want this." I shouted, my voice breaking. "It's not me." They surrounded me, weapons at the ready. Sarah Connors stepped forward, her face hard, but a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. "Jake Wilson, you're under arrest," she said, her voice cold. "On your knees." I fell to my knees, dirt soaking into my jeans. They handcuffed me, the cold metal squeezing my wrists. I looked at the house, at Emily screaming inside, at the blood on my hands. It wasn't me who did it. He did it. Rage. I understood this now, but it was too late. They picked me up and took me to the car. The sirens were howling, the headlights were blinding. I screamed until my voice was hoarse. "I didn't want this. It's not me." But no one listened. They shoved me into the back seat, and the door slammed. I looked out the window, feeling like the world was collapsing. Blood, screams, sirens, it was the chaos he left behind, and I was left to live with it. The day started with the clanging of metal. I was sitting on the cot in the cell, looking at the gray walls, when the door rattled and the guard entered. His boots clattered on the concrete, echoing off the ceiling. Outside the window, if you can call it a window, a narrow crack in the ceiling, the sky was cloudy, like dirty water. I didn't know how much had passed since that night in the forest. The days had merged into one blur after the arrest. Tom's blood on my hands, Emily's screams, sirens, all this was spinning in my head like a broken record. "Wilson," the guard said, his voice as rough as sandpaper. "You have guests. Get up." I stood up, feeling my body aching from sitting for so long. The handcuffs clicked on my wrists, the cold metal digging into my skin. He led me along a long corridor with bare walls and the smell of dampness. Cameras flashed on the sides. Someone shouted something obscene, but I didn't listen. I thought about what would happen next. Court, prison forever, or something worse. I was led into a small room, white walls, a table, 2 chairs. On one sat a man of about 60, gray-haired, wearing glasses, with a folder in his hands. On the other is a woman, younger, with short dark hair and a stern look. The guard took off the handcuffs and nodded towards me on the chair opposite. "Sit down, Jake," the man said, his voice soft but tired. "I'm Dr. Harris. This is Dr. Levy. We're here to talk." I sat down with my hands clasped on the table. They looked at me like I was a broken machine that needed to be taken apart. "About what?" I asked, my voice hoarse from silence. "About what happened," Levy replied, her tone sharper. "About Thomas Carter. About you." "I've already said everything," I answered, looking at my hands. "It wasn't me." "Not you." Harris leaned closer, his glasses glinting in the lamplight. "Then who?" I froze, feeling my throat tighten. Rage. I knew his name. I knew that he lived inside me, but I didn't want to talk. "They'll think I'm lying." "I don't remember," I said instead. I switched off. Woke up and he was dead. Turned off? Levy wrote something down in her notebook. Tell me more. I took a breath, trying to compose myself. It happens, I began. I'm wasting time. The watch disappears and I don't know where I was. That night, I was at home and then I ended up in the house, with blood on your hands. This is not the first time. Harris asked, his eyebrows raised. No, I shook my head. It started weeks ago. Wet boots, burns, mud. I don't remember how this happened. And how did you feel before this? Levy looked at me. Her gaze was sharp. Weakness, I answered. My head is spinning. And then nothing. And after? Harris leaned even closer. Burning in my chest, I said. It's like something is burning inside. They looked at each other and Levy wrote something down. Jake, Harris said slowly, have you talked to anyone about this before the arrest? Yes, I nodded. With a psychologist. She said it was stressful. Perhaps, he nodded. But we think it's more than stress. Tell us about your childhood. I tensed up looking at him. For what? I asked. Just tell me, Levy put down her pen. What happened at home? I looked at my hands, at the burn scar. Father, I began quietly. He was tough, Peel. He beat me if I cried. He said that weakness is a shame. How often? Asked Harris. Often, I clenched my fists. Until I left at 18. And how did you feel? Levy tilted her head. Pain, I answered. Fear, and then nothing. I just endured it. They looked at each other again. Harris opened the folder and leafed through the papers. Jake, he said, what you are describing failures, another you. It looks like dissociative identity disorder. What is this? I asked, feeling a chill running down my spine. This is when the mind splits, Levy explained, usually due to injury. Your father, his cruelty, it could create a second personality. Defender, the one who takes control when you can't. Rage, I blurted out, and I froze. Rage, Harris raised his eyebrows. Do you know his name? I nodded, feeling the heat rise to my face. He's talking to me, I admitted. Whispers. Sometimes it takes over. And what does he want? Levy asked. Punish, I answered quietly, those who betrayed me. They were silent, taking notes. I looked at my hands, feeling naked. He killed Tom, I finally said, not me. Perhaps, Harris nodded. But in the eyes of the law, you are one person. I didn't mean to, I managed, looking at him. I tried to stop it. We believe, Levy said, her voice softening, but we need more meetings to understand how deep it went. The guard entered and the handcuffs clicked again. They took me back to the cell. I sat on the cot, staring at the wall, feeling their words sink in. Dissociative disorder, childhood trauma, rage. It was true, I felt it all my life, but didn't know what to call it. Meanwhile, Sarah Connors sat in her office. The case was closed. Jake Wilson was found guilty of the murder of Thomas Carter. The evidence, the blood, Emily's testimony, everything matched. But she doubted. She saw him during the interrogation, heard that voice, "You're next." It wasn't him, but him. She leafed through the folder: arson, threats, an attack in a garage, a house in the forest. Too much for one person. Or not. Was he a victim of his mind? Or a master manipulator who played everyone? She closed the folder, but the question remained. At night, I lay in my cell, looking into the darkness. The silence was oppressive. Only the guard steps echoed in the distance. I got up and went to the small mirror above the sink, cloudy, cracked. I looked at my reflection, pale face, tired eyes, and suddenly it changed. The eyes darkened, the mouth twisted into a grin. It was him. Rage. I'll be back, he whispered, and his voice was inside me like a knife in a wound. I recoiled, my heart pounding. It wasn't a dream. He was here, inside me. I looked in the mirror, but he disappeared, leaving only my face. I sat down on the bed, feeling the cold compress my chest. Will he come back? Or did he never leave? I didn't know, and no one knew. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.